which is the user import process, right? So primarily, primarily like any application requires identities to be imported, okay, for you to perform identity, meaning what should I call it as? Yeah, meaning for you to perform any provisioning, deprovisioning, or any sort of activities, right? So that is definite. So you require users to be imported into your system, right? So how that can be done? Like you can use different methods of doing a user import thing. Okay. First and foremost could be through a connector. Okay. So basically, it's nothing but you are reconciling users from a target through different methods. Okay. One, you can do it via a connector. Okay, which includes say general out of the box connectors as well. Plus, you can also import them using a database. Okay, so this I will put it separately. Let me put it. So one, you can use any general connector which is supported by your target application. If it is a SAP HR, you use SAP HR. If not, any REST-based applications such as SuccessFactors or Workday. Okay, which is a SOAP-based application again. Okay, so if that is not there, if your target application is a database connected method, then you use a database connector to import the data. Okay. The third one, which is not so popular, but again, like still used at some situations, is just schema-based import. Okay, so database connector method has a way how do you use it, right? So you need to. We'll go through that particular explanation in a moment, but that's our second method. Third method is a schema-based import, which is a file-based import again. But it's not a manual import. It's an automated method where you put a file at a location and then Saviynt picks it up. Sorry. And the last and final thing is the CSV file upload. Okay, which is a manual activity. You need to prepare a extract. Okay, in a certain format and then dump it into the system, right? So uh, um, we will check that method as well, like how do you do a CSV file upload. All right. So out of all these things, the first and foremost, like having a connected application for data import is very widely used across any implementation. Okay. And the second one, the database connector, is used in only some situations wherein um, wherein you don't want to run your data import via connector, but you want certain activities to happen on the users themselves. Okay, meaning say you brought your users in the first execution of the day. Okay, say 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, right? Your users have come in. All right. After your users have come in, you want certain uh, tasks to get triggered. Okay, meaning how should I put it? So for the first time you brought in your users in certain used update roles got triggered through the first step. Okay, through this one. Okay, now through a database connector, you can re-import the users from Saviynt into Saviynt itself by changing a custom property of the particular user, right? So which will trigger user update rules, and you can perform certain activity via your user update rules. So whatever you do is your wish. Okay, but that's another a small use case which or a method which we slightly use sometimes, wherein if I want to trigger certain activity on users after my user import process is done. Okay, so probably I'll use a database connector in that situation and then do a user import back into Saviynt. Okay, Third one
Go
is schema based. As I said, it's a file based thing. Okay. We'll check an example of that. Okay. But again, right, you would need Savient's help to perform schema based data import. Okay. You cannot do it independently. Okay. You need a you need some resource from Saviynt who should help you to get this going. Okay, so that's we'll check that example. What are the files required, etc., and all that stuff. CSV file upload is something which you can do it on your own. Okay, just build a file and dump it into Saviynt. All right. So let's get into the application and check these things one by one slowly. Okay. Um, okay. Say here you have oh, say, for example, you have got success factors. Okay, success factors is your target application which you are using it to reconcile your data. Okay, and success factors usually it is a REST-based application. You need to check definitely with your application team that what kind of connectivity does the application support. Okay, so Workday again, right? As an example, Workday has both REST and SOAP. Okay, so few implementations which we have done were on REST and few were on SOAP. Again, so another example is SAP HR, right? These are some popular connectors or user input. Application, oh, sorry, HRMS applications currently used in the market. So, for example, SAP HR is there. Okay, for SAP HR, you can do it via REST if the application supports it, or you can use a standard SAP connection to reconcile the data again. Okay, see, the way you use a connector, right? Say REST is purely a service-based connectivity. SOAP, you need to it's XML-based driven, right? So you need to frame your XML into JSONs, okay, and then use those JSONs in your connector. Okay, coming back to the connector level, right? So as I'm not going to integrate any success factor or Workday right now because they are complex applications and it will require time for me to integrate that particular thing and show you a live example, right? Rather, we would put efforts in integrating an application and check how provisioning, deprovisioning, or anything access provisioning can happen through. Okay, so first and foremost, like decide what kind of connectivity the application provides to you. Okay, whether you can use a SOAP, REST, or any standard connector. Say even for the sake of database as well, right? So you can use a database connector as well to connect to the target applications database and read the data. Okay, but if and again, right? Okay, let me close this thing first. Okay, so it's a general connector itself. Okay, if I'm using a SOAP or if I'm using a REST, for example, right? If I'm using a REST connector, you should have values in your connection JSON. Okay, you should have value in your user import JSON. That should be sufficient for you. Okay, you should not be bothered about what is happening in the rest of the other connection parameters because they are mostly related to account provisioning or access provisioning. Okay,
Okay.
now yeah, now some connections, right? Some connections they will give you preprocessor. One second. Wherein you can modify user data JSON. Ah, so in the modify user, okay. So till here, so if you're building a REST-based connector, the only thing which you require would be a connection JSON, okay, and a user import JSON, okay. I'm not doing any write back to the target application, so that's why I do not put any other JSONs at present. I'm only doing a reconciliation there. The other part or
Yes.
the one important factor which I just wanted to tell you in terms of your user import process is that of late, Saviynt has introduced something wherein if if you want to perform any changes on the data, okay, meaning your data consists like status key as 0, okay, active status as or let's consider that active status as active, inactive status as inactive. Okay, there are two users wherein one user's status is active, which is written as active, the string as active, and the second user's status is written as inactive. Okay,
Mhm.
when I do a reconciliation of that user or those two users, I cannot use active directly into my Saviynt or dump the status called as active or map status called as active from target to my status key of Saviynt. Okay, user status key in Saviynt. I cannot do that because for me, active is represented by 1, okay, inactive is represented by 0 within Saviynt. All right, so when you do a reconciliation, right, the Saviynt has of late started giving this functionality wherein you can write a JSON, a small piece of JSON, which will alter the data post the reconciliation process. Okay, I do not have the exact JSON example with me. Probably I'll find it out and put it here for reference. But this JSON will help you to format the data which you have reconciled. Okay, so now as I said, active will be converted as 1 within Saviynt, inactive will be converted as 0 within Saviynt. Okay, so that's a use of just JSON wherein it formats the data which you have reconciled. Okay, so just give me some time, probably by maybe after some time I'll just pull out JSONs related to success factors. Okay, and I will just put them here for reference. Okay, I may not establish a proper success factors connector, but I'll just see what if I have some sample JSONs with me from my previous work. I'll just put those JSONs here so that you can refer to them at least. Okay, so that way you can establish a connector, okay, but always remember what is the type of the connection which you are going to use with your target application. Okay, so if you are saying SAP HR is your target application, right, even in that case you still need to use SAP's standard connector. Okay, the out of box connector of SAP in the bottom of this. Okay, so you may have a question that is this the same connection for SAP's regular import, data import, and even for the SAP's application import, sorry, user import, right? For data import, yes, because Saviynt has only one SAP connection, okay, the standard Dataworks connection. For doing a user import, you will again use the standard SAP connection itself, but you will use a different parameter for your data import process, okay? What you will use is that there are two methods again, right? In Saviynt for performing SAP user import from a source called as SAP HR or whatever they call it as, right? So Saviynt supports two methods. One, a method wherein you are directly hitting the database and reconciling the data, okay? And there is another method called as using a function module, okay? See, function module is purely an SAP terminology, or I can quickly throw some light on that. But as I said, there are two methods. One, you can directly hit the database, bring the data into Savient's temp tables, and from temp tables, you dump it into actual tables. Okay, that's one of the methods. The second method is that you use a function module, okay, which SAP might have given it to you and reconcile data from that particular function module. Okay, so remember, it's slightly kind of tedious job. I understand. Okay, because user import has never been a straightforward method in Saviynt. Never till as of I have said, right. It usually takes a week or a 2 week for you to establish that user import, perform incremental and full reconciliation processes. Okay, so coming back to SAP HR, as I was talking, you can directly talk to the database and do a reconciliation process. Okay, so if I use this kind of JSON, right, this will not be a valid JSON for sure.
So
Mhm. All right, I'll ignore these things. All right. There's few mistakes again, which we'll fix it a bit later, or whenever we have a proper example. Um, so what else it is showing? We're passing line number one. User number one. We was expected. What is it? Okay, anyways, let's not sit and debug this issue. We're probably like if you want the JSONs, I'll get you a sample of that. But usually, right, what they're doing right now here is they are so this is the first method of user import from SAP database directly. Okay, so they are first reconciling the data, okay, from this table, which is your SAP table, the target table, and putting it in a Saviynt temporary table, okay. So they are doing like that for three tables, all right. So that, and this A and C are columns, okay, from your SAP table, all right. So, and your Saviynt table should also have the same structure what you are trying to bring from the target, okay. So let me see if I can show you an example. Okay. But those tables need to be created, I believe. They're not that to be created. Yes, yes. Those tables are not there. No. Okay. Anyway, yes. So if you want to, hmm. So this is a table structure of PA001. Okay. Out of this, you will pick the columns which are necessary for you. Okay, and put those columns here. All right. And again, we may not be knowing this if we did not put work on this earlier, right? If maybe you have done work on SAP GRC, so you might be in depth knowing everything about SAP GRC. Okay, say for example, this integration you are not aware. Say for example, as if you don't know what happens in SAP or what are the table structures in SAP. So slightly we may just need some help from somebody to understand it. But with respect to connectivity coming to Saviynt, these things should be understandable. Okay, these should not be very complicated. Okay, but the only thing which we need to do as a sanity check is that these tables are present within Saviynt and they as well carry the same structure as your P8001. Okay, so you do this part, get your JSON ready. Okay, The later part is nothing but yeah. So the later part is nothing but the user query. Okay, this would be the query which you want to put a particular format from which is working in SAP, right? A query which is what should I call it as? No, one second now. User import query is the query which you write it on top of your Saviynt. One second, you have bit confused. What's it doing here? This is nothing but Saviynt query itself. It's a select query. Okay. Yeah, it's a select query across these temp tables of Saviynt using certain columns, the username, first name, and last name, and you are putting these columns into these columns of Saviynt. Okay, I think that is the only notation which they are following. Okay, and there are certain other attributes, right? If users are not in the field, you can delete it. Okay, you can initiate your zero-day provisioning, etc. and all. Okay, you can initiate your zero-day provisioning. You can generate a system username rule. You can check for rules. That is a technical rules or user update rules and stuff like that. Okay, so on this part, I'll get back to you whether this query what they're putting here is a SQL query, which is with respect to Saviynt, or is this something which is written on top of which is a uh, SAP query, right? So I believe 99% this is the query which usually Saviynt understands the MySQL format, but I'll just confirm that to you again. Okay, to my knowledge, again, this usually is the MySQL query which Saviynt understands, and on top of the tables which are present in Saviynt. Okay, and we are mapping these columns, username, first name, and last name, into these username, first name, last name columns of users table. Okay, so these columns. Okay, let me go back here. So these columns are the columns from your Savient's temporary tables PA001002, and the username from this query is being mapped to the username of Savient's table. I think that's what is happening, 99%. Okay, but I'll just clear my doubt and get back to you as well a bit later. Okay, so this is one method of doing your user import process from SAP HR. Okay, so the other method is again the function module method, right? So right, so it's a program which is sort of written on the target for you. Okay, you use that program, and that program will give you certain pre-populated data in a certain fashion. Okay, so what they're doing in Saviynt, okay, they're calling the function module. Okay, say for example this one right here, and till here, yeah, and they're calling this function module and mapping the respective values coming from that particular function module to the values which are there in Saviynt. That's what they are doing. The response map here, okay. The response map, the system username is being mapped to a particular value called as USRID, okay, which is a string, okay. Username is being mapped to USRID again, which is a string. First name, last name, and all that things. That's all. So this would be a much easier method of doing an implementation rather than going with a database method. Okay, why I'm telling is that you need to use a function module because 80 to 90% of the customers they would not give access to their database directly. Okay, in this first method, what we are trying to do is that we are hitting their database directly through Saviynt using a user ID and password. Okay, there could be chance, and in this case there could be chances that this particular user ID of Saviynt can perform any activity. It can even by mistake it can trigger a write back action to that particular database, or it can do anything. Okay, so on a safer side, usually like the implementations we do sometimes with SAP HR, we use function module. Okay, which is an easier method, and you have your data ready made. You need not to massage your data as what you're doing here. Okay, so again you have to do a column mapping here, you have to write a query, etc. and all. Okay, here you just need to call that function module, map your source and target attributes, and then just get going. Okay, so this overall kind of explains the SAP HR implementation. Okay, on a very high level. Okay, and another kind of popular connectivity which we sort of started using of late. Okay, so remember these three things: Workday, success factors, and SAP HR. So I have not come across any other implementations which recently moved away from these three. Okay, so I think that's all. In the older implementations, when it was the REST and SOAP were not so mature, it was sometimes a database connectivity. But 99% of late, they have been into REST, SOAP, and SAP HR.